Meeting to order. If you please take the roll, Douglas.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Dunn.
Here.
Commissioner Arp. Here. Commissioner Gilmetti. Present. Commissioner Guardino. Present. Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
Commissioner Medaffer. Here. Commissioner Tavaloni.
Here.
Chair Alvarado.
Yes,
We have a quorum.
thank you. Item 2 is welcome to the region. We're going to have Mr. Taglioni.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and distinguished and honorable members of the California Transportation Commission, Mr. Director. Boy, it seems odd to sit on the other side of the dais here. I'm John Tavaloni. I'm one of the elder nephews of this distinguished man on the other side of the dais this morning, Mr. Joe Tavaloni, who I consider, it's difficult to say because I have so many uncles. A lot of them are gone, but my most favorite and cherished uncle. But I am current vice chair of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, soon to be chair in January. I'm here on behalf of the Board of Supervisors. My colleague John Benoit, who is the chair, is very ill, unfortunately, and couldn't be here. He sends his regrets. And I'm incoming chair of the Riverside County Transportation Commission, and I wanted to welcome you to our beautiful facility. I think this is the 12th year that you have been with us here in this great facility. We built this, you came in right after we built the facility as an annex to our 14th floor administration center, and we're very proud of this facility. I've had the great pleasure of serving on the Board of Supervisors now. I'm just finishing up my 22nd year. And since taking office, our county has doubled in size, doubled in population. And I've seen a lot happen here, as you can well imagine, especially in terms of transportation. I recall vividly driving down the 91 freeway coming in from Newport Beach and wondering what the heck happened when San Bernardino County didn't discuss anything with Riverside County when they expanded the 71 freeway and didn't have any discussions with Riverside County. It just didn't work that way for many, many years. And then the 91 freeway had the toll roads built by a private sector entity without any real discussion between the two counties, and literally eliminating the opportunity for Riverside County or Orange County to expand our two freeways, to expand the 91 because of the limits that were put on the 91 freeway for expansion. You didn't want the toll road operator to be limited in terms of their profitability. So we fought like hell to Riverside County, and Orange County fought like crazy to I and then Supervisor Todd Spitzer, now again Supervisor Todd Spitzer, fought like crazy to gain control back of the 91 toll lanes, and they did. Orange County bought it back, as you well know. And now we are great partners. Riverside and Orange County are great partners. And today, Riverside County has the largest, I believe we're still the largest transportation project under construction in the state, with a $1.4 billion project on the 91 freeway to expand the toll roads now into Riverside County, from basically the Orange County line into Riverside at the 15 freeway. And that project is going like crazy. Amazing contractor. It'll be done just after the first of this year, I think around February. And then once we're done with that, we're going to start another 15 miles of toll facilities along the 15 freeway from Cajalco north over to the 60 freeway, where it meets up with San Bernardino County. So, and that's just a small segment of all the transportation projects that we have going here in Riverside County. And I tell you that only because we're huge, almost 2.4 million people now, fourth largest county of the 58 in the state, but we couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do what we're doing without you, the California Transportation Commission, and you have been an amazing partner every step of the way. And I want to say on behalf of my colleagues, what do we have now, Ann? 38 members on the Transportation Commission? 34. I remember when we had 7. We have 34 members on the California Transportation Commission. We have had the opportunity to work with you and so many of our legislators at the state of California to gain funding, along with our representatives at the federal level, to gain the funding in partnership to build these projects. Not to mention twice having a supermajority pass a sales tax measure here in Riverside County, where other counties have not been able to do that. The people of Riverside County have said, we understand the importance of transportation and build it, and we will help support it. But we know you're challenged today by what you have been able to do. You had to pull back $750 million. And we know it's not easy at the state right now, and we're here to help you every step of the way, whatever we can do to help, because we know it takes a team effort. And just want you to know that we will always be there because you have been there for us. And with that, I know you have a long meeting ahead, and I just want to say how grateful we are for you as the members. We know you serve long hours. I don't know how this man here does it. I just only can say I hope I have his genes. Yeah. I just want to say I'm not shy to say in front of all of you, in front of the world, whoever may be listening, this man, I love him so much, and he's a man with a heart of gold, and a man who is a man of honor. And you can't believe how many people want to honor him. I'm getting sick and tired of getting all the damn invitations of people that want to honor him. But Uncle Joe, I treasure you, and the Transportation Commission, thank you for everything you do, and have a great day today, and please know that we're here to support you every step of the way. So thank you.
Thank you. Ann?
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Secretary Kelly, Assemblymember Frazier. It's very nice to see you all again, Executive Director Branson, and you clearly can see how lucky I am every day to come to work with not one but 2 Tavalonis in my world. So thank you very much, Commissioner Tavaloni and Supervisor Tavaloni, our incoming chairman, for all that you do for our region. Well, Commissioner Tavaloni explained to you just some of the history and things he's seen over the past 20 years here as a county supervisor, but I also would like to highlight for you, this is RCTC's 40th year. So we kicked off our 40th year celebration, and it really is very exciting because not only are we opening the 91 express lanes in just a few short months, rolling into the I-15 Express Lanes project immediately afterwards, as we promised. But we also opened our 24-mile extension of the Paris Valley Line project, which provides additional transportation and transit choices for the citizens of Riverside County. So we're really excited that billions of dollars of investments going into the transportation backbone here in Riverside County will really help us make sure we can address the needs of our existing and future residents, but also have a true multimodal system here in place. I do want to highlight, makes it sound so easy to say we're opening the 91 in a few short months. If you haven't seen that project, it is absolutely unbelievable. In a short 2.5 years, over 32 bridges have been built. We've added miles of additional pavement, reconstructed interchanges. It is a spectacular project, and we would not be here if it was not for the support from this commission to get this project done. When we approved our program in 2006, we had absolutely no authority for tolling, no authority for design build. It was simply a vision. It's taken us 10 years, but we're almost here, and I just wanted to express my appreciation. Many of you up on this dais were an important part of making sure that we got those authorities, and I wanted to express my appreciation to you. I also want to highlight that we wouldn't be able to be where we are without the partnerships we have with you, but also the partnerships with Caltrans. Malcolm, you and your team are terrific, and I want to thank you for that. John Belinsky, the District 8 Director, is here in the audience, and I think some of his team is here as well. He's a terrific partner for this region, and I value working with him on a daily basis. Another partner in the audience is Ray Wolff, and I think he's going to come up and speak to you right now, but it's also great that here in the Inland Empire, we function as a team, and we're looking out not only for our own interests and our own responsibilities and our individual counties, but also looking out for the Inland Empire and the region as a whole. So thank you very much. Welcome to Riverside. We're happy we're here. And Mr. Wolff.
Thank you, Ann.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. I join Supervisor Tavallone and Ann in welcoming you to the Inland Empire. I'm Ray Wolff, the Executive Director of the San Bernardino Associated Governments today, but soon to be the San Bernardino Transportation Authority and San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. That change will be official January 1st, so I didn't want there to be confusion at your next meeting. San Bernardino County is also a self-help county. Our voters understand the value of a high-quality transportation network. These are exciting times in our county. We're advancing a number of significant projects and truly appreciate the partnership we have enjoyed with the Commission for decades. We're not just paving lanes in San Bernardino County, we're also investing in transit. Our focus in everything we do is building connected systems because that's going to be important for our future. While investing in transit is a priority, we cannot neglect the highway network as we are the gateway to America for goods movement, much as the ports are the gateway to the Asian marketplace. We face major transportation issues from this growing segment of the economy with limited federal investment to address what is truly a national issue. Congestion and diminished air quality are just two of the issues that we must combat arising from this industry. I would like to leave you with one request. Earlier this year, I stood before you imploring that you not saddle San Bernardino County with the largest reduction when you were going through the STIP reduction exercise. I understand that your hands were tied at the time. However, it appears that the legislature, led by Senator Bell and Chair Frazier, are poised to find a solution that will, at least in part, restore some of the STIP reductions that occurred earlier in the year. And I ask that when that hopefully occurs, that you recognize that San Bernardino County took the lion's share and you help to resolve that situation. Investing in our county is not just crucial to the residents of San Bernardino County, but also to the broader SCAG region, to the state of California, and as I mentioned earlier, to the nation as a whole because of the goods movement economy. I thank you for your time and welcome.
Thank you. Item 3, a resolution of necessity. Rick?
Yes. Commissioners, item 3 is a resolution of a necessity via correspondence. The property owner, Roscoe Moss Manufacturing, has requested a written appearance before the commission. The property owner's letters dated February 11, 2016 and October 21, 2016 are included in the book item in the official record of the commission meeting in lieu of a personal appearance. The department's response dated November 4, 2016 is also included in the record. The change list item for this resolution is the addition of the attachments for the property owner's letter of February 11, 2016. At this time, I'd recommend the chair determine if the property owner representatives are here and desire to speak.
Ready?
No? Staff would recommend approval of the resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Art, second by Commissioner Dunn. Further questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 4, approval of the minutes. Motion by Madaffer, second by Taglioni. Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 5, Commissioners' Meetings for Compensation. Motion by Gilmetti, second by Taglioni. Further questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 6, Executive Director's Report.
Is this? Right, Commissioners, I have a number of items to report on today. As you know, the Commission was working on receiving or having career executive assignment positions at the Commission, which would enable over the long term a greater ability to recruit from a broader pool. And the Commission did receive authorizations for those career executive assignments, and we did advertise through a competitive process. And I'm pleased to report that we have placed Garth Hopkins in a CEA position as Deputy Director for Planning. As you know, his experience here, you're already familiar with his planning background, but he brings with him a very strong planning background, having served in the Office of Regional Planning, Transportation Planning at Caltrans for a number of years. So we were pleased to make that appointment. We also appointed Eric Thronson to the Deputy Director for Transportation, Finance, and Legislation. And again, you know his work having worked here, but he also brought with him the breadth of experience having worked for the Legislative Analyst as well as the Senate Transportation and Housing Committee. We also, in advertising for the CEA for the programming position that was the new position that we have, you do know that we had a programming position that was vacated with the retirement of Laurel Jansen. And so today I'm pleased to report to you that we have appointed Mitch Weiss to fill that career executive assignment position as a Deputy Director for Programming. What that means is that we now have a vacancy for the Road Charge Pilot Program Deputy Director. And that is also a career executive assignment. It is currently advertised. It is posted on our website, and we're hoping to get that position filled as quickly as we can. We also have a new employee, Erica Butler, who joined the Commission on November 21st. She's filling a vacancy that was that occurred with the promotion of Jennifer Valesco. Erica will serve as the assistant to both Christina and myself in fulfilling administrative responsibilities. And on another personal matter, wanted to announce that we now have an attorney, Tim Nader, who is here with us today. He comes from the California Attorney General's office, and he has a very broad background, which will be very good for the Commission. And I'd like to ask Tim to please stand and be recognized so those in the audience know who our Commission's attorney is. So. All right, and then Commissioners, as I mentioned in the last meeting, that the Commission was nominated for the Partner of the Year Award by the Solano Transportation Authority, and I'm pleased to let you all know that the Commission did receive that award, and it was a true honor and recognition, and Vice Chair Inman accompanied me to the event, and I wanted to just see if Commissioner Inman wanted to share anything.
I can figure out how to turn my mic on. There we go. Yeah, I just want to say that it was so great to join the Solano Transportation Authority. They packed the Veterans Hall there to celebrate their success, and I think we forget to do that quite often. We spend a lot of time dwelling on what isn't going right, but you could just feel the coalition, the power of working together. So we were honored to be honored as their partner, but I think it was just really great, and I would encourage all of you to consider doing something very similar because success breeds success.
All right, and Commissioners, I have a few more items. I wanted to make you aware that the department and the Commission, we are jointly hosting an asset management plan workshop on December 15th, and I'm sure that Director Doherty may have that in his remarks. but it's in Sacramento to discuss the Transportation Asset Management Plan. And it's really an opportunity to invite key stakeholders, have us all together in a room and really talk about the development of this important plan and, talk about priorities for asset management and share ideas, goals, and objectives. And this workshop, the results of the workshop we will share back with you, but just want to encourage all of you who are participating in this meeting today to be aware of this. It's December 15th in Sacramento, and the stakeholder input is very important in that workshop. And then also wanted to report that today at the retreat, we did confirm that the commission a year ago made a decision to continue the current chair and the vice chair appointments for a 2-year period, consistent with the commission's operating procedures. And so the current chair and vice chair term is set to end February 2018. And with that, I did want to just finally recognize a few of our staff members who've worked very hard on a few items that are coming before the commission today. In particular, Lori Waters and Ann Johnson, for their work, and Megan Pedroselli, who's not here, but she's a student assistant. Our active transportation program was a tremendous amount of work, and I just wanted to recognize them today, as well as all the evaluators that worked very, very hard on their own time to review applications, and the Caltrans Local Assistance Office. And Commissioners, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Susan. Any questions? Item 7 is commission reports. Lucy?
Oh, thank you. Let's see if have I got this on? Yes. I wanted to share with the commission that I think I've reported this on another occasion. For the last 2 years, I've had the privilege of being a facilitator between a significantly important environmental coalition called the Save San Onofre Coalition and the Transportation Corridor Agencies on their 15-year litigation battle to avoid the construction of the extension of the 241 toll road to the I-5. This has really been a fascinating journey to watch for the last 2 years, helping these partners. And these are folks from Cal Parks Foundation, NRDC, Surfriders, Resource Legacy Fund, the Sierra Club, the list goes on and on. In fact, I even had 3 attorneys general sitting in these meetings representing 3 different agencies working to come to hopefully a resolution of the issues. And at the end of the day, on November 10th, I'm pleased to share with you that the parties did come together to announce that there were certain areas of South Orange County that will be forever protected, including San Onofre State Beach, Trestles, very famous for surfing, the Don O'Neill Conservancy, and a variety of other habitat areas, and allow the transportation corridor agencies to move forward on a new process to begin a new alignment, avoiding all of those areas to connect ultimately, possibly, with the I-5. As Mike Cramen would say, it turns an impossible project into one that is just very, very hard. And yet it's really a great move because engaging the community and learning all the things we know in innovation in transportation here, to include bike lanes and transit options and managed lanes, the community is engaging on a new alignment approach for this project. I'm very proud of the work, particularly want to acknowledge Mike Cramen from TCA and Elizabeth Goldstein from the California Parks Foundation, instrumental leaders in coming together to show that the environmental community as well does not oppose mobility. They actually want solutions that protect both the economy and the environment. So it was a great honor and privilege, Mr. Chairman, to be part of that process and to help them succeed. And just a note, you know, Orange County is the toll road capital of the state of California. We've got 54 miles of toll roads now. It's the first successful public-private partnership I'm aware of with new revenue, Mr. Secretary, in the mix. And so to be able to complete the system at some point in the process does make sense in light of all of our mobility challenges as an alternative to the 5, and helps both San Diego and the Inland Empire, in addition to Orange County. So bravo to the players. Keep an eye on this. At the end of the day, at the end of their very long process, the new alignment will come back to this commission for final approval. So I just want to really commend good minds for working together for the last 2 years. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Christine?
How's that?
You're over there, I think.
See if this works. How's that? Better? I think we're a little bit out of sync here. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a quick acknowledgement of a ribbon cutting down in San Diego, the North County Corridor, I-5 improvements was celebrated last week. And Caltrans director was there, Federal Highway Administration, many local elected officials, and many staffers from Caltrans and Sandag. And I just want to thank Caltrans and Sandag, the citizens of North County who worked so hard on it, and conservationists and wetlands advocates. This project will improve I-5, support transit, make significant improvements to the wetlands that have been heavily impacted by infrastructure investments over the last 40 years, and became a model program for both environmental preservation, transportation investment, and public works approval, including coastal commission approval. So I was glad to see everybody there. Very much appreciate people taking the time to mark the ribbon cutting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Randy?
So I want to borrow a bravo from our opera singing Commissioner Dunn to give a shout out to our self-help counties, a focus on the future. A number of us participated this week, and what's not to love about a conference that really focuses on our future. So hats off. I heard the number 1,100. I know there are a lot of folks there. I would love for it to grow even larger. I'm not sure Keith Dunn would share my passion for doubling the size. But if you don't attend, I would encourage you to attend. The various panels were just fascinating, I thought, in terms of learning from others. So just want to extend our congratulations to the self-help counties.
Yes, just a brief mention. Many of the commissioners who've been here for a while remember the hard-fought battle to get the funding for the Willits bypass. And that project, it finally became a reality last month, and we went up to the Chair Alvarado, myself, and Chair Gilmetti. Well, he's been chair enough, but he's just commissioner right now. The three of us, we actually carpooled up there, so, just a little side note. Went up there, and it was a beautiful program. I think the whole town showed up. It was one of the largest ribbon cuttings I've ever been to, but it was very well supported by the local community, who are very excited to have this project done and completed. Wonderful program. Part of the program included a tribute to a local fallen soldier from Willits and the bridge there was dedicated in his name. Very well done. And then afterwards there was a little kind of a caravan of old cool cars that went up and down the freeway carrying us and other folks. But anyway, for those of us who've been around for a while and knew what was involved in getting the funding for this project, it was a good day all the way around. And I want to thank all those who have been supportive of this project and worked to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Also, just add to Fran Inman's comments, the Focus on the Future event was really good. It was great to see standing room only in a number of the sessions. A lot of people interested in transportation funding, a lot of folks interested in what the future holds. I'll just say this out loud, and maybe I'll say it later more in the RTP comments. focusing on what and how we plan based on how transportation is changing is so very important for us. And I know it was great having Malcolm there as well, and there was a lot of good ideas shared from the various panelists. Also wanted to report that Secretary Kelly had assembled what we called the Road Charge Fall Forum. This included, he assembled department heads or senior reps from numerous departments, including DMV, ARB, CHP, Department of Finance, Consumer Affairs, Caltrans, the agency, and the governor's office. And it was really a good place for us to be able to share with the department heads really what the road charge pilot has been doing so far, what we expect as it gets ready to conclude here in the first quarter of next year, and what our next steps would be. And it's a way for the departments to start talking to each other as we look to, again, this possibility as a alternative to funding transportation where the gas tax, as we know, is fading away. Spoke at a Transportation for America conference. It was in Sacramento, again on road charge, and a number of other events that I won't bore you with, but it's been busy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else? Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A brief report today, mostly following up on some conversations you and I had more informally, but as we end this year and get into the new year and the new legislative session, of course, for the governor's office and for the administration, we have the unfinished business of enacting a comprehensive transportation funding package, which is a conversation we've been engaged with for some time now. I'm happy to report that both Chairman Frazier and Chairman Bell have reintroduced legislation on December 5th to speak to this issue and to set the stage for important conversations as the legislature reconvenes in January to move forward on transportation funding. As I said, for us, it remains unfinished business that we are very much looking forward to concluding in the earlier part of 2017, and we're pleased with the continued focus of the legislature, and particularly now as well the legislative leadership, which is, in my view, taking an enhanced role in this process, and I think it'll probably help move things along. Secondly, I want to acknowledge and also appreciate Assemblymember Frazier for the introduction of AB 28, which is legislation that would help California continue its delegated authority to do the NEPA and CEQA processes together. We're one of just a handful of states who has that authority, and we need to extend that authority further. AB 28 was introduced on December 5th as well, and we're looking forward to working with the chairman and leadership to fast-track that as much as we can to get that done. So I'm going to keep it brief and say those are sort of the big-ticket items as we head into the new year, and appreciate working with all of you as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity. Many of the things that I was going to give an update on have been covered, and I'll try to skim over just the remaining items. We have hired a new deputy director for sustainability from a personnel standpoint. Her name is Ellen Greenberg. She comes to the position with nearly 30 years of experience in working with cities on transportation type items, including non-government organizations, mostly in the private sector. So we look forward to working with her. I want to express my appreciation to Marlon Flournoy and Mark Samuelson for filling in that position. We've also had a temporary change for the Division of Rail and Mass Transportation. Our Division Chief, Bruce Roberts, is actually going over to CalSTA to work on some initiatives over there. In the meantime, Mr. Stephen Keck is going to be filling in as the Acting Division Chief of Rail, somebody you're very familiar with. In his place, he will be fulfilling his budgetary duties today in his presentation to you, but starting on December 5th, earlier this week, he will be the Acting Division Chief of Rail and Mass Trans. In his place, acting for the Division Chief of Budgets is equally qualified Mr. Clark Paulson, and Clark is here today. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of those changes. I also want to give my compliments and congratulations to the SelfHelp Counties. There were 4 new counties that became SelfHelp Counties, and I think that that's worth noting. Monterey, Merced, Stanislaus, and Santa Cruz are new to the ranks of SelfHelp Counties, and they can also make a significant contribution to transportation in California. I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate Santa Clara and Los Angeles for their successful measures as well. There is a call out for fast lane grants. We are feverishly working through a long list of projects and narrowing that list of projects down. The call for those projects is due on December 15th. We are working with our local partners to identify the most competitive projects. There's a $850 million in grants available nationally, and we are narrowing those down. We will have the opportunity to submit 3 grant proposals. We also have the opportunity to be co-applicant with local partners on transportation and projects, and then we can also supply letters of support to other projects. So that whole portfolio of projects, I think, is going to be a good slate of very competitive projects for freight in the state of California. Commissioner Kehoe mentioned the North County Corridor in District 11, and that was quite the event. And also mentioned was the project for Willits, and that was a long road, and it was very nice to see that project celebrated the way it was. I will defer comments on the Everyday Counts Summit that FHWA had in Sacramento so that Mr. Mamano can cover that. I will comment that it was my pleasure to participate in that, and there were representatives there from FHWA, including Administrator Greg Nadeau as well, and that was a very well attended and very well put together summit. I will defer to Vince Mamano to be able to comment further on that. We also have upcoming ribbon cuttings that I'd like to highlight to you just in the upcoming weeks. On December 9th, we'll be cutting a ribbon on State Route 4 Crosstown Freeway Extension in Stockton. December 15th, we'll be cutting the ribbon on the I-5 North Stockton Improvement and the I-5 Rehabilitation projects. Also in Stockton, they're the first HOV lanes in the San Joaquin Valley. December 16th, we will be cutting a ribbon on the Across the Top project on I-80 in Sacramento. And this is just a reflective of some of the projects that are coming online and some of the great work that our local partners in our Caltrans districts are doing. So with that, I look forward to working through the agenda items you have today, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Thank you. Mr. Mamano.
Because Brian Kelly stole Malcolm's stuff, Malcolm's got to steal my stuff. What the heck's that? And then he gives me his agenda, the things I need to talk about. So I'm scurrying back, thinking I better talk about Everyday Counts then, since he...
At least you've got a nice tie on. That's
thank you for the nice tie comment. Very good. Merry Christmas to you all. Hope you all have a great holiday season there. Several things. Malcolm, thank you mentioned the Everyday Count Summit. So I appreciate the participation that California did. We hosted an Everyday Count Summit for the region, had Hawaii, Arizona, Colorado, California, Nevada, New Mexico, had several states. Good cross-section of people. It was a very limited amount of people that we could bring to this, so I apologize for not being able to invite everybody. But I think the biggest point in all of this is trying to get innovation. I've heard you all talk about innovation a lot. I've heard Caltrans talk about innovation. I know they've got innovation fairs, and I think all your districts now. And the whole point of Everyday Counts is there's a bunch of widgets that we're trying to bring out to everybody at different things. Design Bill was one of them. Safety Edge was a hot mix asphalt. There's a bunch of different things. But the biggest point is how are we getting innovation around to everybody? You know, and it may not be innovation to you, but that stuff you're doing might be innovation to everybody else in the country. So that's one of the big things we're trying to do is see how we do that. I have to offer my congratulations on the I-5 North County Corridor and the Willits. I've had the opportunity to be a part of a lot of the challenges that have gone into those, and I think especially on the Willits, I think Caltrans stepped up, and I think Caltrans did right. I was involved in a lot of the challenges that were on that project, and I appreciate the compassion, the concern, and just trying to do the right thing on projects. I don't think people get that in the transportation. If you're not in the transportation industry, I don't think you see the actual effort that goes into getting it right. So I appreciate what it goes into, and I know everybody here in this audience is the same way on their projects. I appreciate what it takes, what you go through to get the projects right. So a few things. Appropriations Act, we have the FAST Act, which is our authorization. That was our 5-year. Then we have appropriations, which is yearly. That's essentially, here's the money to go spend on the FAST Act. Well, that expires on December 9th. So if we don't get anything on December 9th, that's the whole government shutdown thing that you'll be hearing. But our appropriations, our ability to spend the money that was determined in the FAST Act expires on December 9th. So I've heard a bunch of different things to March and end of the year, so who knows. Usually the most we ever get is at the end of the year. It's a yearly appropriations. But those are the types of things that expired at the end of September, and they pushed it to December 9th. So that's coming right around the corner. Malcolm talked about the Fast Lane grants on December 15th. Those are the deadline for that. I'll come back to the LEAP program. I understand we have a nomination of Elaine Chow as our new Secretary of Transportation. She's actually been Deputy Secretary of Transportation under the first Bush administration. Sounds like she's got a lot of experience in transportation, so I think that's a good thing. So we'll see what happens there. NEPA assignment. It sounds like you guys are moving forward with the legislation for waiving sovereign immunity. But if it doesn't happen before January 1st, then you no longer have the ability to approve your own environmental documents under the National Environmental Policy Act. So that means it comes back to me, which means I've got to go back and review anything that you guys want signed in that window until you get that NEPA the waiver of sovereign immunity approved. So that's an important piece to this whole program. There's other pieces to it. We have in the Federal Register right now currently the ability to comment on the Memorandum of Understanding, which implements this NEPA assignment here in California. So that'll be expiring on December 19th. So if anybody has any comments on that, it's in the Federal Register right now. The Memorandum of Understanding for categorical exclusion. So there's other parts of the environmental process that expires in the Federal Register on the 29th. Got a couple other Federal Register things. Everybody behind me probably knows about 1273, the Form 1273, which is the standard language for federal aid contracts, talks about Davis-Bacon wages, all of those types of things. That has actually gone into the Federal Register for people to comment on, so that hasn't been changed in quite a few years. Pretty sure it's been before I was at least with Federal Highway, maybe born. So that's being re-upped right now. And there are project management plans that are required on major projects. There's a Federal Register notice out right now to be commenting on that. Now, LEAP. So locals empowerment for accelerating projects. So that was a pilot program that was offered. We're going to do offering the ability to up to 5 locals around the country to be direct grantees with the Federal Highway Administration and work directly with us on everything. We have that closed last week, the week before last. I don't think the names of all of them are public yet. I think we had 14 in the country that applied. I think I was expecting a few more. This is the application was for anybody who is interested in doing that. Doesn't mean we're going to be able to let them do it. Doesn't mean we're going to be able to do it. But right now, are you interested in it? Because there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of they have to have the controls in place, the financial controls in place. They have to have the support of the state DOT. There's a lot of overlaps, a lot of challenges to that. So as soon as I know, I'm allowed to share with you the names. I think it's going to end up going on a docket somewhere, so I'll be able to share all the names of the cities here in California that applied. Very early stages. There's challenges in California with things like NEPA assignment. So does that mean Federal Highway will take care of those environmental documents, or does Caltrans take care of those environmental documents? What about if they're doing work on a state route? I'm not going to come in and say I'll do the design exceptions when it's a California. It's Caltrans, they're responsible for managing that. So there's a lot of dynamic to that. That remains to be seen, even if anybody's going to really want to do it after there's a lot of discussion that goes on to it. There's a lot of challenges in that. There's a lot of cover that a state gives, because if we have to pull money from a project because it was done wrong or something like that, I pull it from the state. State has the opportunity to go and take it from the local. We've been in situations here in California, I know Susan's nodding because we were part of a discussion about that, where we've possibly bankrupted a local because of their inability to do something correct. We had to pull the money back. So we had to figure out a way to work that through. So that'll be quite an interesting take. we'll see how that pans out. I think that's all the stuff. Sorry, Monica, you almost snuck away. Too late, Monica. So Monica Gordine, you have to wave your hand or stand. Recognize her, clap. I have to tell her, hey, look, she's more important. Now I get to give her phone number instead of mine because she's here now. So she's my deputy here in Southern California. She runs our Southern California office. Mike Duman, or that was Rick Backlund who had left to Kansas, and Mike Duman, our chief operating officer in the north for the whole state, but he kind of runs the stuff in the north, has retired also, and we're bringing a gentleman over from Nevada, Federal Highway Administration in Nevada, a guy named Paul Schneider. So when you guys are in that area, we'll introduce him to you. But if anybody is looking to talk to me about anything in the South, my name is Monica Gordine, and I can be reached. Give her the heckling? You want to heckle her? So, no, you're going to have to heckle me. I will take the hits from my team. And I don't trust you at all. I don't know what your nephew's talking about over there. I know you. I know you, pal. All right? I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying.
Looking forward to her promotion.
Bingo.
Any questions? Oh, and the theme this year is Reindeer Training Academy PE class, if anybody's wondering on the Christmas decoration.
Turn the microphone on helps. So yeah, anybody who wants to do a drive-by with us of the Mamano front yard, it's quite spectacular. Executive Director Branson and I happened to be in their neighborhood.
I live in Nevada.
I would encourage all of you to do the drive-by. It's amazing what you do.
We're going to put a can out this year for a SMUD donation.
But so my question, Malcolm mentioned the fast lane grants, and obviously December 15th is coming up. We have a number of applications that once again will go in from California. Last time we didn't do so well. So I think the commission's going to come forward with a letter that kind of reminds you all from your Beyond Traffic the importance of California. So if we jammed your inbox with emails, would that help you remind your colleagues?
My email address is monica.gordine you're welcome to share support letters and stuff with me. I'll share them with my administration. That's handled out of the Secretary's office, the fast lane grants. I think the response I got from my leadership when I shared the concern that you and many others here in California had about the fast lane grants and the lack of showing in California was, actually you did, I think, at least 10% of the fast lane grants, so that's pretty typical for the proportions that you get from the whole program. But the response I got was very quickly, relax, it's not a sprint, there's another one coming. So that's the statement I kept getting was, there's another one coming, and that's this one. And it really came in pretty quick after the last one. And the last one had a quick turnaround too, so I think this is giving some people some more opportunity.
Okay, well just remember, every day is a freights day.
Every day is a freights day, and they all count. That's the story.
Vince, thank you for the report. With the incoming administration, do you see any changes in FHWA, including job security?
Yeah, well, that depends. Monica's right on the fence. She's on the chopping. Sorry, Monica. No, so the way the administration works, when a new administration comes in, there's only 5 politically appointed positions in the Federal Highway Administration. There's the Administrator, Greg Netto, Deputy Administrator, David Kim, the Associate Administrator for Policy, Associate Administrator for Public Affairs, and our Chief Counsel. So those are the only 5. There are several of us in the Senior Executive Service, and it's our responsibility. So there's 4 division administrators like myself, Florida, New York, and Texas, and myself are in the Senior Executive Service, as well as the senior leadership in DC. And it's our job in Senior Executive Service and federal government is to make that transition smooth. So we're already working with the transition teams that are coming on board, but there's usually very little. There's federal regulations, there's laws, there's all these things that you just can't change because you don't like it. You have to change it through a process. So I don't usually see a lot of stuff. Everyday counts, something like an everyday counts. Some of the discretionary things like the fast lane grants and things like that. Tiger really tied themselves to the administration. So those are things that happen. But I have some job security. Some. No.
So you're here
Right
for-
up until I screw up big, then that's a whole different story.
You're here for another 4 years.
That's the story I'm going with. Any other questions?
Further question?
Hey.
Thank you,
Hope
Monica.
you guys have a great Christmas.
Regional agencies.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So before I begin, I want to say that the Regional Transportation Planning Agencies met today. And actually, let me introduce myself because this is my first time, Melissa Garza with Fresno Council of Governments, and I'm the FY 16-17 moderator, but you haven't seen me because I've been on maternity leave. And so you've seen Patricia Chen from LA Metro, and I do want to say thank you on behalf of the Regional Transportation Planning Agencies for her taking the lead during my absence. And she's been a great help and kept me abreast throughout the time that I was on leave. So I do want to say thank you very much to her on behalf of the RTPAs. Baby's good. He's 6 months now, and he's growing fast. So I want to also say that we want to wish Sharon Scherzinger good luck on her retirement. She's been a great contribution to the industry, and we are very proud of her. We hope she enjoys her retirement, and look forward to her coming and visiting us in the future. We went over a few items today, and we received a lot of updates. We went over this STIP, and we want to say that we are pleased to hear that not only have you already entertained and adopted a policy change to advance the construction when capacity is available, we also are looking forward to you making a positive direction today in adopting a policy change to also advance rail and transit projects in the STIP, of course, if there is money available or capacity available for that. So we look forward to being able to implement and advance projects as soon as possible. We also appreciate the amount of work and collaboration that has taken place between the state agencies and community partners, as well as between the MPOs and RTPAs regarding the RTP guidelines and the development of the CTP guidelines. I think that staff has done a tremendous job in taking in a macro level amount of input and putting it down into the guidelines and coming out with those documents that as we move forward in our planning activities that we'll need to integrate. And so we are very grateful and happy that we've been able to work very strongly and together during that process, and inclusive as well. And along those lines, we also want to thank the commission staff and Caltrans for working very closely with us in the development of the ATP guidelines and through the evaluation process. That has been a tremendous amount of work that has gone into that, and the amount of collaboration and cooperation that has taken place with that program has just been a wonderful experience. I think maybe not for Lori, sometimes not very wonderful, but ultimately the collaboration it was fantastic, and we want to give her our kudos for that. And we look forward to continue to improve the program as well. And by that, we mean that the RTPAs have developed a few recommendations that we've put together. We've shared with Caltrans and CTC staff, and we hope to bring those forward to you in the future as we look to implement and or actually integrate them into future cycles, as well as improving the deliverability of our projects. And so we'll continue those conversations and hope to come to you in the near future with those recommendations. And then lastly, we do want to thank Kome Ajizi for coming to our meeting today. It was a pleasure to have him join us and give us a presentation regarding the interim guidance on the LDIGR. We are looking forward to more thorough conversation that's going to happen today and the presentation that will be given to you. And we also look forward to seeing how the interim guidance will also align with the guidance that will come out of OPR regarding SB 743. And I think maybe I'll conclude my report there. We want to thank you for your time, and I can try to answer any questions if you have any.
No questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rural counties, Maura?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mara Toomey, Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. The Rural Counties met on November 18th and discussed the following issues and concerns. In regard to the RTP guidelines, the Rural Counties want to thank the Commission and Caltrans for the thorough and open process and support approval of the guidelines. The Rural Counties especially appreciate the development of separate guidelines for the RTPAs, which clarifies the requirements for rural agencies. In regard to the ATP recommendations, the rural counties support the staff recommendations. The rural counties, however, remain concerned about the decreasing competitiveness of smaller agencies and appreciate the efforts of Commission staff to address these concerns. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Self-Help Counties, Sarkis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Assemblymember Frazier. Sarkis Kachek, Santa Barbara County Association of Governments on behalf of the Self-Help Counties. As has been previously mentioned, the Self-Help Counties are very excited and pleased to announce that we have 4 new members to the coalition, Merced, Monterey, Santa Cruz, and Stanislaus counties. We'd like to congratulate those counties. We'd also like to congratulate Los Angeles and Santa Clara counties. When you aggregate all of the funding that was approved by voters in November by these 6 counties, approximately $1 billion in funding is being added to transportation. So we wanted to make sure to highlight that. We did have our board of directors meeting at the Focus on the Future conference in Hollywood. We'd like to extend a thank you to Commissioners Inman and Medaffer for being at the conference and for being on the panels there. So we had, like was mentioned, we had a successful conference. Couple notes, we are very proud to announce that we awarded Riverside County's and Mayor with the CISFIS Award. That's the 3rd annual award, and it was for her dedication to providing Californians with innovative transportation solutions. So thank you to her for all of her work. The Self-Help Counties is still pursuing the Federal Aviation Administration issue related to taxes collected at airports. We are looking to expand our coalition outside of California and with other agencies that are impacted by this. And so we take any threat to our funding seriously. And if you are interested in being a part of the process, please let me know and I'll let Keith Dunn know. But we'll be progressing on that in the next few months. We also talked about the important relationship that we have with the Commission, and so we'd like to formally request a town hall meeting with the Commission to go over a series of issues and challenges that the Self-Help Counties face and how we'd like to partner on future opportunities with the Commission. So I know that Mr. Dunn will be following up with Executive Director Branson on that. The coalition also approved support for both AB1 and SB1, Assemblyman Frazier's and Senator Bell's statewide transportation funding proposals for 2017. It is critical that the state adopt a funding package, and the coalition will work very hard to support these efforts in 2017. And then we also agreed to work as a sponsor in support of AB 28, Assemblymember Frazier's NEPA delegation extension. This is critical legislation which will continue a successful program by removing any future sunset to the authority. Timing is critical on AB 28, so we'd like to express our continued support. And a final item that I'd like to share with the commission is that we are interested in hearing the update today from Caltrans on the Local Development Intergovernmental Review Interim Guidance. Currently, many of our members are currently engaged with the Office of Planning Research on their development of CEQA guidelines to implement SB 7043, which seeks to revise transportation impacts analysis under CEQA targeting infill areas. In order to ensure these guidelines do not conflict with each other, creating confusion in implementation, we hope that time will be granted to review the Caltrans guidelines and allow for consistency with the OPR process, which more information will be provided next month. With that, this concludes my update, and I can take any questions at this time. Okay. Thank you.
Item 14, Garth.
Sure. Commissioners, for the Innovations in Transportation agenda item, informational agenda item, we're fortunate to have Mr. Larry Yarmak from Cubic Transportation Systems. Mr. Yarmak serves as a strategic advisor to the Cubic Transportation Systems, where he has helped develop toll and ITS businesses at Cubic. Prior to this position, he was the president of a leading ITS and toll systems company, and he has also held executive level positions in the public sector. Mr. Yermak has been involved in a number of national and regional transportation issues in the areas of research, education, and applications to ITS technology. And with that, Mr. Yermak.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, commissioners, and hi, Malcolm. I'm here to talk about a little bit about Cubic Transportation Systems. Some of the slides are an introduction to Cubic, but I really think that the bulk of the presentation, which obviously won't go on very long, is really about connected urban mobility and some ideas that Cubic has been working on, and I think some ideas that are already embedded in systems in California. And at the end, let me offer an idea that a way of moving forward that may intrigue you. Cubic is a San Diego-based company. The intersection between the defense side and the transportation side is the increase of situational awareness and understanding. The transportation side is really focused on transportation payment processing at its core, operating about 20 regional transportation systems around the world. And on the defense side, a lot of its work is in training in training and support worldwide. One of its probably more well-known systems is the Top Gun flight simulator. So if any of you are in San Diego and want to try and be a Top Gun, it's out in one of the buildings to play with. I don't even try. But I really wanted to talk about the transportation side of the business. Cubic is it's known fundamentally as a transit payments processing company. We'll talk about the clients. It collects about $50 million a year and processes about 50 million passenger transactions each day, operating 20 regional back office systems. It has also built itself out from merely, I shouldn't say merely, but by being a transit systems provider, also to being an ITS provider, and expanding its payment operations into tolling as well. I apologize for the slide not showing up clearly. I'm no PowerPoint expert. But the point of the slide really is that Cubic has been doing this for a long time. It introduced the fare collection system in New York in '91, in Chicago in 2002, in London in 2003, and then it won recompetes in Chicago more recently and London more recently, and the New York system is currently in the New York system is currently in a recompete process. But Cubic has worked hard over the years. I was not there then, but worked hard over the years to be at the state of the art in collection technology. The important, that's the list of the customers of Cubic. The three largest transit systems in California, Cubic customers in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, and in San Diego. And it also operates in some of the other largest cities in the world, like New York and London. Okay, enough on Cubic. Let's have a little fun and talk about what's going on in transportation. I don't have to tell you about the demographics in the world, the increased urbanization in the world, and the need for critical transportation networks. I also probably don't have to tell you about the need to predict and manage demand. We have been struggling as an industry with the concept of demand management for decades. And one of the ways that we thought we're going to solve the problem was congestion charging. That has succeeded approximately nowhere because people don't want to be charged more for something. They want to be charged less. The ideas embedded in what I'm talking about today really allow for incentivization as opposed to congestion charging by combining services, by offering discounts, by putting transportation services together. It's possible to modify the demand structure by actually reducing prices. It doesn't require an increase in prices. And we clearly need integration of the transportation systems. I mean, it's not, I remember years ago talking to the president of a railroad, and he talked about his customers. And I said, Howard, they're not your customers. They're just trying to get to work. They're just trying to get home. They're doing whatever they can to do that. They don't see themselves as customers of a particular transportation agency. The world tomorrow, more informed travelers. They're more informed travelers today, and their expectations about equitable charging are there now. I actually do all of my demographic tests with my two 20-some-year-old daughters, and that's the population that that is making the demands upon the system today. And what they're interested in, what we're interested in, is the convenience of a single mobility account. It is now becoming a topic of conversation in transportation. In Europe, it's mobility as a service. In the United States, it's mobility on demand. There are a number of experiments in Europe that are moving forward. There's a fair amount of talk about it in the United States. What I've learned in my, I don't want to tell you how many decades in transportation, is anytime there's something new, every engineering company and every systems integrator will explain to you how they're already expert in it. They already do it. And the good news from my perspective working with Cubic is that, and I'll show you in a few minutes some slides, they've actually been building out the backbone of making mobility on demand work and not just talking about it as a concept. They've been talking about it for 6 years. I've been giving presentations like this for at least for the 5 years that I've been with Cubic. And here we talk about the future of transport. You know, it's really not the future of transportation. It's really the current existence of transportation. The expectation is that people will be able to use their smartphone to do everything they have to do for their trip. The expectation is that they will have real-time passenger information. The expectation is that that government will integrate the management of transportation systems and manage the network effectively. The future of tolling is undoubtedly road user charging, and I know you have the single most important pilot in the United States on that going forward, as well as the integration of parking and other shared services. I was at a conference in San Francisco a few years ago, and we talked about, this was a couple of years ago, we talked about shared transportation services, and at the time, there were 17 different shared services in the San Francisco Bay Area. That was 2.5 years ago. I don't know how many there are now. And so the vision that Cubic has been working with these last 7 or 8 years, I've been there for about 5, is the idea of having a single payment account for all modes of transportation. Your transportation account, if you will. That it be personalized, that you get pushed updates. In fact, the thing about personalized is that most transportation systems are anonymous. What the toll agencies did with electronic toll collection really created the idea of the customer in transportation. A customer is when you know somebody's name and address and phone number and communicate directly with them. So this is the idea of an account-based solution, not simply a card that carries value. And I'll mention where the integrated Super Day Pass comes in later, but I'll mention that because it's on the slide, is that in London, if you buy an Oyster card, and you buy it for per ride use, the system knows if you get to the time of the day when you've used enough rides to get to a full day price that it stops charging you. The system needs to know that. You can't, and it does that in London. The integration of information, be able to do pricing on a dynamic basis. And we don't have it on the agenda for today, but obviously there's enormous opportunities in big data, not in big databases, but in really understanding what we can learn from all these different things that are going on. So I will spare you blessedly any detailed slides on what the Next City ecosystem looks like. The only thing I'll say about it is that it is designed to use as much as possible publicly available open source platforms. So if an agency wants to use a different customer relations management solution, then that's an opportunity. If they want to use a different accounting solution, that's an opportunity. There are a couple of things that had to be built for it. But the idea is to have a single account for all transportation services, for tolling, for shared services, for transit, for parking, for road user charging, and integrate this all into the traffic management scheme in the region. The single most advanced transportation payment system in the world is in London. There are more than 12 million journeys a day. It's an open, you can use an Oyster card, you can use your smart card. The system is available for use on dozens of agencies and opportunities within the Greater London area. TfL is a very sophisticated agency, and Cubic has partnered with them for a couple of decades. The single most advanced transportation payment system in the United States is in Chicago. It's the Ventra system. Went in about a couple of years ago. And again, in Chicago, you can use your smart card, or you could get a Ventra card and take advantage of all the discounts. About a week after the system went live, Apple introduced the watch with iPay, and Ventra was able to seamlessly accept it at their fare terminals. So it's accepting of all payment media. And then they introduced the mobile app. I mean, the gold standard for transportation is to have an app that tells you what's going on in the system, that allows you to do journey planning on the system, that gives you updates on the system, and most importantly, allows you to pay for your ride. And the problem with virtually all of the third-party apps that you can get from the App Store is they're not able to tie into the payment system because the United States banking system doesn't make it easy to tie into the banking system for obvious reasons. Public agencies need a trusted partner to do that. And the final example is San Francisco, where Cubic has been operating the Clipper card for a number of years. It's frankly, it's old technology. The MTC is in the process of recompeting that system now, but it's a great example of more than a dozen agencies working together cooperatively around a single system. The most important thing I wanted to say about this slide is the first bullet about intelligence moving from the reader to the back office. When I got started in the business, all the intelligence sat at the front end. It was at the turnstile, it was at the toll booth, it was at the traffic light. And it had to be at the turnstile, the traffic light, or the toll booth because we couldn't move data quickly or cheaply over any distance. The earliest toll systems had the most incredibly complicated accounting for vehicles and for vehicles in the lane. And so when back offices came along, first for toll systems and then later for the other agencies, the agency saw them as it was an add-on. It was sort of something they needed to do. In fact, in some of the earlier back offices, the engineering companies themselves actually built them. I was involved as a consultant on some where they didn't have an accountant. They didn't even have an accountant working on the back office. The fact is that today, with high-speed data transmission being what it is, high-speed wireless data transmission being quick and cheap and effective, the intelligence in the transportation network can move from the front end, from the lane, from the turnstile, to the back end, to the back office. And it really opens an opportunity to rethink the way we think about transportation systems, because we never thought about payment systems as an organizing principle. We always thought about payment systems as the thing you stuck on at the back to collect the money. And what we have here is an opportunity to use those payment systems as an organizing principle for how to actually manage the transportation network, integrating all the payments, transmitting the data, using it instantly. And then the benefits of this vision fall into three categories. They fall into the category of customer convenience. My daughters would expect it. It would fall into the benefits of reduced costs for the operators. And the third benefit, and the one that's really the most interesting to me as an old-time transportation wonk, is that there's an opportunity for real transportation demand management here. There's an opportunity by tying all the services together to make the kind of offer to somebody of, you know, this bus is really filled, but the next one's got a lot of seats. Why don't you take a 50-cent coupon and go get a cup of coffee and take the next bus? Or it's a bad travel day. Why don't you get off of the highway and park in the park and ride lot and take the train in? And by the way, we're going to let the Metro know that we're going to need extra service, and if they can't provide it, we're going to make sure that the TNCs are notified and they're able to provide vehicles themselves for that location. So by tying it all together, by having the political leader of a region the ability to talk to all of the citizens of the region at the same time, there are really some enormous opportunities that we've just begun to scratch the surface of. And the last thing I want to say is a slide that I didn't write, but it's just to think for a moment about road user charging. Road user charging is, California is clearly leading the country, in my opinion, in the road user charging area, despite what Oregon has done. But road user charging, it doesn't have to be just a replacement for the gasoline tax. In fact, it could conceivably be the basis for a statewide transportation account. If you're going to, and I understand from my discussions with folks in the state, going to be bidding multiple back offices, and you clearly need a lot of help to process more than 30-some million vehicles and their accounts, instead of just bidding the offices out on a random basis, why not regionalize the back offices and tie into road user charging all the other existing facilities are already charging? The toll agencies, the transit agencies, and all the other agencies that will want to be part of an integrated transportation system. So I really thank you for your attention. I love talking about this. If you have any questions, I'd be delighted, or comments, I'd be delighted to hear them and respond if I could.
So thank you, exciting. So at some point, I just reached into my wallet to see what I might have in here.
Right.
And those of us that travel in multiple jurisdictions, so at some point, I can just use my phone and not have to have all these little gadgets. Is that your vision?
Or your watch, yeah. I mean, the
Yeah.
goal would be to simplify that process dramatically, yes. And also to have them all tie into a single account to manage it centrally.
And are we going to reward, you know, we spend a lot of time talking about being multimodal, especially on the freight side, but also on the passenger. So have you seen anybody really looking at rewarding using multiple modes?
Getting from where we are to where I think we would like to be is not going to be easy. We know that. I mean, talking to Ann Flemmer over the years about what it was like to get agencies to join Clipper, it's painful. So I think that the way I see it is to look at a region and see where is there an opportunity to add 1 or 2 or 3 services to an existing back office. If there is a back office serving transit, can we add bike share to that? Mm-hmm. Are there TNCs that want to be a part of it? Now, maybe Uber doesn't want to be a part of it. They don't want to share customer data. But maybe some of the smaller TNCs would welcome the opportunity to get more customers and be part of it. So I think it's obviously, the strategy clearly needs to be regional, and it's clearly complicated. But I would see starting with one base system and adding on. And if you were to go ahead with a regional back office for road user charging, I think right away you would have an incredible base upon which the regional agencies could participate and probably save significant money in their operating budget.
And then one quick final question. I noticed the Port of New York and New Jersey on one of your opening slides. Are you doing anything on the freight sector?
I don't know. I don't know what to. No, I don't think so, frankly.
Well, it's a vast opportunity out there.
No, I know. What I'm saying is that at this point, the New York City Transit is recompeting the Metro card. Cubic is one of the companies offering it. Cubic will offer up a solution that has this back office, and I'm sure, if successful, we're happy to work with the agencies about building out the platform to include other agencies.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
She's behind Jim.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's Jim's, isn't it?
No, this is yours here.
Okay, sorry. I thought we did this last time. Okay,
No.
here we are.
That one goes on. That turns this on. You're on.
Okay, very good. Thank you for, a fascinating presentation. I appreciate it. I'm a San Diegan, and I'm a great admirer of Cubic. I think of Cubic as sort of a company early on in the technology sector in California, in San Diego and California, that sort of built the way from military electronics to the digital age. And it's wonderful to have you with us. And I've ridden your systems in many cities. How can we make transit? I was just on the BART last week and tried to on the train from San Diego to LA not too long ago, et cetera. So how do we make transit, not the transportation choice of last resort, which I think it still is in a lot of ways. If you've got the option to use a car, you're going to use a car. I love the BART because the price is right. And it's faster than the surface transportation some days, but I got off at the Montgomery Street station and I had to carry my roller bag upstairs 2 times before I got to Market Street, which is, it's a drag. And it's hard to, be an enthusiastic proponent of transit, which I try to be when I know that there's these barriers for lots of people, older people, women with children, disabled, or just if you're carrying a lot of baggage, so I know you're in the IT part of it, but what about the other factors that impede the growth of transit?
All I can offer you is what I know. I'm not a transportation planner, and I wish I could solve. I wish I could solve the mega problem, because it is a mega problem. But the only sort of what I know about this is that we have an opportunity to look at the transportation network. We have an opportunity to look at the transportation network a little bit differently than we have in the past, and we have an opportunity to look at it as an integrated network. I don't think we've ever really thought about the toll roads being connected to the transit system. We've never really thought about the taxis being connected to the to any of the other parts of it. So. If I had an account, a transportation account, and the system knew what my route was that day, and it knew what the problems were in that route, it could send me a message making suggestions on how to travel perhaps differently. So maybe I would use a car for part of the trip, but maybe there'd be an opportunity to use the train from a park and ride lot. It is and it's an educational problem as well, and a direct communication between the operator and the user is a way to bridge that gap. I'm not so good at driving around when I don't know where I am, but when I have a Google map telling me where to go, I'm fine. If I had personalized directions on how to do that, it might make a little bit of a difference. And the truth is that we know that the percentage change that we need to make in road usage to free up capacity It's not 50%. It's probably somewhere in the single digits. Looking at Malcolm for, but we don't need to make a huge change in people's patterns to make a huge difference in the way the system operates.
Good thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Item 16, or item 15. 16.
15.
Going right. 15.
And do we have Mr.
Garth.
Barnes? Okay, great. I just we have the fortunate opportunity to have Mr. Dorian Barnes, who is the executive director of the Foothill Transit, and is also be serving next year as a chair of the American Public Transportation Association, or APTA. Foothill Transit provides bus service throughout San Gabriel and Pomona Valleys. APTA serves as the advocacy organization to strengthen and improve public transportation throughout the nation. Mr. Barnes?
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad those hard transit questions came up in the last speaker's presentation. I was thinking about joining you here today, and in many respects, and sort of in an indirect way, my career actually began with your commission. As a newly minted graduate of UC Davis, I did my undergraduate work at UC Davis, where I served as a coach operator for Unitrans, got some experience in the transit industry. But when I graduated, I joined Ernst & Young as part of their transit consulting group, and one of my very first assignments was to support the commission staff as you rolled out the Proposition 116 rail funding program. So I worked with staff on that rollout, and in many respects, this commission was formative in those early years for me. Interestingly enough, one of my other key assignments during my time with Ernst & Young was to do an evaluation of this little startup transit system called Foothill Transit, where I now serve as executive director. So it's always interesting how our lives intertwine in very interesting ways. I have the great honor of serving as the chair of the board of directors of the American Public Transportation Association. I stepped into that role in September, and I will actually serve for 13 months because we go from our annual meeting to annual meeting. So I'll be in this role through October of next year. As mentioned, APTA is the leading advocacy organization at the national level for the public transportation industry. We are a membership organization. We have 1,500 members that include the full spectrum of public transit providers and suppliers. You might think of transit operators, but also planning organizations, universities, and business members, including Cubic is a very active participant in what our association does. We exist for a couple of reasons. One is to advocate what we're doing and advocate for funding and policy activities at the national level in Washington, D.C. Second, to communicate the work that we're doing broadly throughout the country. And thirdly, to come together to exchange ideas. And much of what you heard about in this last presentation is very central to our conferences, workshops, seminars, publications. Lots of things are changing. You're at the center of all of that. APTA is also at the center of learning and sharing and facilitating all of this great learning that's happening. So it's a very big agenda, very big organization, and a great honor to be serving in this role. Coming in as chair, in many respects, I think that we have a process and a cycle that leads a person to this position. And in some regards, some of the things that I wanted to do are still in the pipeline. In some regards, some of them are defined by recent activities. First on our list, of course, are the changes that are happening in Washington. We know that we have a new Congress coming in. We have a new president. I was actually in Australia when the election was happening, so I was watching it Wednesday morning when it was unfolding here Tuesday afternoon. And the one thing that I was very encouraged to hear from Mr. Trump was his mention and his commitment to infrastructure. And certainly infrastructure is what makes our economy grow, makes our economy strong, and we have tremendous needs. Again, you all know that very squarely. What we're doing in the public transportation arena is making sure that we're delivering that message solidly. We're not quite sure where the new administration will go in terms of transportation funding and infrastructure funding, but we want to make sure we're delivering a message. We're delivering it loud. We're conveying what our needs are so that as those decisions are made, we're there. We're part of that conversation. So that's number one on my priority list. Second area that we're focused on, again, in the transportation world, safety is always a top priority, and we're taking a big lean in on our safety programs. APTA has a whole series of programs and services that we're offering to our members to help strengthen what they're doing from a safety standpoint. So again, that's something that we're emphasizing in a huge way. Third area that we're very focused on is workforce development, and a particular area that we're taking a deep dive on is diversity and inclusion. APTA has, and our industry has much to be proud of in the diversity and inclusion area. In many respects, some of the goals that we set a number of years ago have been achieved. Now it's time to set new goals, so we're focusing on doing that. Turning to the internal parts of APTA, we are currently searching for a new CEO, and I'm serving as the chair of our CEO Search Task Force. That's no small challenge in and of itself. We're looking for that next great leader that will help us write the next chapter of history. And then finally, we're doing some very important work to strengthen our bylaws. And just to give you some sense of the way we're structured, we have a very big tent, if you will. Our board of directors is 120 plus members. We have an 18-member executive committee. And so serving as chair of that large body presents its challenges. We're doing some things to strengthen our roles and relationships in terms of how that body works together and make sure, again, that we have the strength that we need to go forward. Those are sort of my 5 high priority areas, but there's lots of other things that we're doing. All of the evolution, the mobility on demand, autonomous vehicles, new ways of service delivery. As Vice Chair Inman knows, electric vehicles is very near and dear to my heart. We've had a number of conversations about that. We're focusing on workforce development with leadership training programs. We have a very robust research program. There's a lot of stuff happening. And in many respects, serving as chair this year is particularly exciting, given that we're at the beginning of a new 4-year cycle in Washington. We don't know what that's going to look like, but we certainly want to do all we can to influence that. It's a pleasure and an honor to represent California within the National Association, and certainly anything that I can do to assist the good work that you're doing, please don't hesitate to call on me. California doesn't often get the chance to hold that chairman's position, and I certainly want to get as much mileage as we can out of it. So glad to answer any questions, and certainly always glad to be of assistance.
Thank you. Any questions?
Dorn, I just want to thank you, and I really want to encourage you to help us hear the best ideas you hear coming out of your group, and anything we could do to facilitate the implementation of adoption of, these are changing times.
Absolutely.
So I think we're really going to look for you to keep our phone numbers on speed dial and whatever we can do to kind of be the bridge to connect some of the players, so we can, we don't have to be the pioneers, but we can clearly be the early followers.
Lots of things happening, and certainly glad to do that. I think in so many cases, California does lead. And whether it's the mobility on demand, which we're all learning about, trying to figure out how to maximize using technology to make all of that happen, I think California will again be a leader, and certainly the partnership is very important. Also related, not so much from an APTA standpoint, but from a foothill transit standpoint, we are the national leader in the development and deployment of electric vehicles, electric transit vehicles. So we're very excited about that, and looking forward to continuing to push the boundaries on that and share what we know so that we can drive the industry forward.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 16, Eric.
Yes, Commissioners, thank you. This is an action item, and without objection, I will recommend that you approve 4 issues that I'm going to present on. The staff report has 3, but we're going to add 4, so pay attention.
Well, this ought to be good.
So you got it. I'm keeping you on your toes. So first of all, staff recommends that you accept the staff report, including the direction on how to monitor legislation in the upcoming session. Second, staff would recommend that you approve the staff recommendations included in the report on how the commission will implement the legislation that was signed into law this year. It goes into effect on January 1st. Third, there is attached a letter in support of the fast lane grant applications that I believe Commissioner Inman made reference to the letter earlier. This letter just tries to enforce our feeling that California is a central cog in the freight machine that is the U.S. freight system, and we really need the federal government to recognize how important we are in this when they consider our fast lane grant applications. Finally, while again, this is not in your staff report as the bills were just introduced on Monday, AB1 and SB1, AB1, Mr. Frazier's funding bill, SB1, Senator Bell's funding bill. These funding proposals appear to be consistent with previous proposals, as well as AB28, Mr. Frazier's bill, which appears to be intended to accomplish the same aim as AB 2034, the solace bill last year that the Commission had a support letter for. Given that these bills appear to be very similar to the bills that we have in the past, the Commission has in the past supported, staff proposes that if these bills are consistent with Commission principles, that staff will share the Commission's support in writing with the legislature, specifically urging the legislature to act as quickly as possible on these bills. I think that we all agree that these are critical, and we have over and over again issued letters of support for proposals like these, and as long as staff finds that they are consistent with what the Commission has in the past proposed and the consensus principles that the Commission has adopted, then staff would share the Commission's support for these bills with the legislature. And that is the part that I just added. So if y'all need me to go over that again, I'm happy to do so, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Would the commission want to do one motion? Would one motion suffice?
Second.
A motion by Manaffer, second by Dunn to accept staff recommendation. Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 17.
Very nice. Thank you, commissioners. That was fun. So the next item is the budget and allocation capacity item that Mr. Keck will present on for the final time, at least for a while. And so please give him all the questions you can think of and make this as much fun for him as you can. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric, for that introduction. Yeah, very good friend. I can't see if the presentation is up yet on my screen. Nobody else can either. So I beg your indulgence while that comes up. Although while it does, I can tell you that the first slide will look like a big pie graph that we've seen before, and you have a hard copy of it. You've seen this pie graph before. We present it at every meeting. This is our new way of showing allocation capacity and what the Commission has allocated to date. This shows allocations through the October meeting, and what it's telling us is that about 40% of the funding available in the current year has already been allocated by the Commission, leaving about $2 billion in capacity left to allocate. I will say this is a good position to be in for this time of the year, given that traditionally, especially in the shop, a lot of the projects are delivered in the latter half of the year. This is significantly ahead of where we were last year, and last year we were successful in delivering all of the funding, or all the projects to utilize the funding, and I anticipate the same for the current year. So this is a good look to start with. The next item I would like to speak about is something that we spent a little time on at the last Commission meeting, and this is cap and trade revenues. And at the last Commission meeting, we talked about these specifically because the auctions leading up to that meeting in October were what you might call disappointing. At that point, the two auctions leading up to the October meeting had generated combined just $18 million in revenue for the entire state. So this last auction that occurred in November, in that auction, about 2/3 of the available credits were auctioned off, generating about $360 million in revenue for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. That is a tremendous improvement. It's about 20 times the amount that was generated in the prior two sales combined. 20 times. So this puts us not exactly where we were when this program first started, but a huge leap forward from where we were, and we were quite nervous at the last Commission meeting. What this does is it generates about $36 million more for the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, which at the last Commission meeting we had recommended and universally accepted that it would be a good idea to hold allocations in that programs to the amount of money received. So this will increase the capacity in that program by $36 million immediately. It will also increase a separate program, the LC TOP program, which is the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program. That program will increase by about what's the number, half of the other, so $18 million will go to that program. So this is a significant increase, and the next auction is in February, I believe, and we'll continue to keep the commission apprised of how those auctions are doing, because it will impact and actually increase the allocation capacity for both of these programs moving forward. So it looks like we're getting a little more momentum in this area. We're doing a lot better than we have been, and that's pretty darn good news. As is tradition for me, however, I do have bad news to share, and this is a slide is a little complicated, so I want to preface this a little bit by talking about what we were speaking of when we were developing the revised fund estimate, where we had the very fun task of reducing the STIP programming capacity because of the impacts of the price-based excise tax. So at that time, we had this concept that we spoke about where the pie of all the revenue generated from the price-based excise tax, off the top of that pie comes the backfill for the weight fees that are taken in a separate action. So every year, if that pie gets smaller, the amount of money that goes to backfill the weight fees remains the same. It takes up a larger and larger portion of the pie. So what that leads us is to something that's never happened before, at least in the history of the price-based excise tax, where in August, there was actually not enough revenue to even backfill the entire amount of weight fees that were generated. So the slide before you shows the actions in August for the last 3 years. So this is just the August revenue received, generated by the price-based excise tax. In 14-15, it was over $200 million for the month of August, and about half of that went to backfill weight fees. It's worth noting that August is by far the largest month for weight fees. It's about 12% of an entire year's worth of revenue. So it's not every month that we have such large weight fee backfill. But in this case, in 15-16, the amount that went to backfill was about 90% of the revenue. And in 16-17, this last August that we just had, no money was left over after the amount that went to the weight fee backfill. In fact, the weight fee backfill was about $4 million more than the total revenues generated by the price-based excise tax. And that $4 million actually carried over into September. So we haven't seen it again in September. There was some money left over, but not very much. And if you remember back to when we talked about the price-based excise tax in the adoption of the revised fund estimate, the total amount of revenue generated this year for the STIP is only $150 million, an equal amount to local agencies. So when you have a situation where the amount of weight fees is high, you might, as a local agency, not see any funding from this revenue source. And of course, for the state highway account, we didn't see any revenue from this source either. I bring it up for two reasons. One, to remind everyone how dangerous a price-based excise tax is. And two, to let the commission know that some local agencies without a lot of cash on hand might experience difficulties in situations like this, where they might expect revenue that's not received. So for the year, I expect the revenue to remain about what we projected, but in some months there may not be much, if any, revenue that goes to transportation coffers. Finally, I wanted to speak about some upcoming events. In December, within the department, I'll only first start with the continuing resolution. I believe Vince did mention the continuing resolution. The latest information that we have is that the House has put forward a bill that will be heard tomorrow in the House and in the Senate on the final day, on Friday, that would extend the continuing resolution through April. What that does, though, is it continues the funding from last year, the same amount of funding all the way through April. So when you're expecting about a 3% increase in those revenues, consistent with the FAST Act, you're not going to see that yet until they appropriate the full amount. So continuing resolution just continues last year's budget. So that may delay some of the revenue. It won't be a problem for the state. And really, the amount of OA received eventually will equal the right amount. And we should be in pretty good shape. The second thing I wanted to talk about is within the department, we're kicking off the fund estimate now. And at the next meeting, we'll bring to the commission an overview of the fund estimate process and a timeline for adoption of the next fund estimate, ultimately adopting the fund estimate around August of next year. In January, the governor's budget will be released, and Mr. Paulson will be able to present an update on the governor's budget to you then. And then, as I mentioned before, in February is the next cap and trade auction, and we'll keep you updated on how well we did. That ends my presentation, and I'll be happy to take questions. Or no questions is fine too. Very good, thank you.
I have a question. Okay. Top button.
There we go. Just a quick observation, considering the struggles that we've been through on the funding. Your whole STIP column is $236 million, right?
For the current year allocation capacity, the STIP, yes, is 236
Yes.
million.
And SHOP is basically 10 times that amount. So we've already used up, as opposed to some of this where we are less than half because we're less than halfway through the year. We've already spent more than half, or our capacity on STIP is already more than half done, right?
Yes, so STIP is right now at about 60% fully allocated.
Right. So it underscores your comment, we could run out of money for some of the STIP by the end of the year. What are you going to do?
Oh, no, I don't think so. So on the state side, we have reserved the cash for this funding, for the STIP funding already. And I don't want to complicate the discussion, but during the fund estimate discussion, we talked about the fact that when the gas price-based excise tax was extremely high, 21.5 cents, we already knew it was going to nosedive, maybe not as low as 10 cents, but we knew it was going to nosedive. So when we develop allocation capacity and the fund estimate capacity, we take that into account to make as level a playing field as we can with regards to the STIP. So we won't run out of cash to fund the STIP, but we do have demand for STIP funding that far exceeds what's available.
Right. So going forward, so you've got enough cash flow wise because of wise management to take care of what we've already committed. But basically, because this number is so anemic, we really don't have a dang thing to look forward to down the road.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, there's far too much. There's far more demand than there is available funding.
Yeah. Well, just one quick observation. I drove down here because we had some other things going on in Southern California, but I commented to my wife as we were driving down 99. I said, it feels pretty good. We and thanks to Secretary Kelly, who had a different job at the time, but was very instrumental in putting all this together. There was $1 billion that was carved out just for that one corridor, talking about corridors. And I'll tell you what, if you drive, not many people except truckers are driving all the way up and down 99, but if you do that, you have seen a huge difference today versus what it was 10 years ago, a huge difference. And that money has been spent, it's been well spent. Some people may complain about bond measures, but I'll tell you what, it did a lot of good stuff at that time. And those kind of projects are just absolutely off. There's nothing like that we're going to be able to do down the road with this kind of a program. And that's why we got to do what Assemblymember Frazier and Senator Bell and the governor are trying to do. It's trying to get some more money into this.
Thank you. I totally agree. Thank you.
Item 18, you'll notice that Mitchell Weiss was assigned. He took ill last night. We wish him a speedy recovery in his place. Don?
Yes, thank you. So item 18 is an information item on the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee. The TAC will be meeting this Friday, and the key discussion items they'll be talking will be a pilot update, a report on the mid-pilot survey, transition strategies, and lastly, the Transportation Agency program report outline. As a note for the pilot update, the open enrollment during the first half of November allowed participants to switch account managers or reporting methods, and that is all I have in Mitch's notes. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Any questions? Very good. Seeing none. Item 19, Don.
Yes, so item 19 is an information item again. This is an update on the freight program guidelines development. Three items that I'd like to highlight is moving forward, we'll be referring to this program as the California Freight Investment Program instead of the National Highway Freight Investment Program. So we want to make it more specific to California. The second item I want to highlight is that under AB 133, we had a loan repayment to the Traffic Congestion Relief Fund, which we will be administering through this program, and that's $11 million, a one-time infusion through this program. And then thirdly, the book item lays out all the workshops that we have scheduled through April. And I'd be happy to take any information or questions.
No questions, thank you. Item 20, Lori?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an action item to adopt the statewide and small urban and rural components of the 2017 Active Transportation Program. Staff recommendations for the statewide and small urban and rural components of the 2017 ATP were made available to the Commission, Caltrans, and regional agencies by email on Friday, October 28, 2016, and posted on the Commission's website. Since the recommendations were distributed, staff has identified changes and corrections to these, and they are reflected in the yellow replacement book item. Program guidelines for the 2017 ATP were adopted in March of this year, and project applications were due by June 15th. The 27 ATP covers 2 years of funding for fiscal years 2019 and 2020 and 2020 and 2021. There's approximately $263 million in programming capacity available for the program, with about $158 million available for the statewide and small urban and rural components. Applications were received for 457 projects valued at almost $1 billion. Commission staff formed a multidisciplinary advisory group to assist in evaluating project applications. Staff took several measures to ensure as much objectivity in the evaluation process as possible, including holding mandatory training sessions for all the evaluators to try to develop some consistency in the scoring. And Commission staff reviewed every application and reviewed the evaluators' consensus scores to look for any inconsistencies in the scoring. We determined the evaluations to be fair and well-balanced. Also, as part of the review process, Caltrans reviewed each project for eligibility and deliverability. 12 projects were determined not to be eligible for the program and were not evaluated. These project applicants were notified. Caltrans will continue to work with the successful applicants to resolve project component eligibility issues and deliverability issues, and will report back to the Commission within 6 months with any programming modification recommendations. Sorry. One of the projects included in the original staff recommendations, the CV Link project in the Coachella Valley, was scored by the evaluators based on the information provided by the applicant. After releasing the staff recommendations and posting the successful applications, it came to staff's attention that the information included in CV Link's original application for the first question was incorrect. Commission staff rescored that question in the application, which resulted in the application score being reduced by 4 points and the project dropping out of the staff recommendations. This freed up programming capacity for 5 other projects to be included in the staff recommendations. You'll also notice with this book item a great volume of correspondence received on a project in Santa Barbara. This is the West Side Bike Boulevard project. Some members of the community are opposed to this project and have been active in voicing their concerns. Because of this, Commission staff visited the project site and met with both the city staff and some of the community members that opposed the project. Commission staff has also had phone conversations with other community members that fully support the project and has also received letters of support for the project. Commission staff determined that the City of Santa Barbara submitted an accurate project application and it was fairly evaluated. Therefore, the project is included in the staff recommendations. In the statewide component, the scoring cutoff to be recommended for funding was an 88. 9 projects scored an 88. There was not enough programming capacity available to recommend all 9 projects. Therefore, staff used the secondary ranking system adopted by the Commission in the 2017 ATP guidelines to determine which projects to recommend for funding. Based on this system, staff is able to recommend fully funding 4 of these and partially fund 1 of them in the statewide component. One other project that scored an 88 is in a small urban area and will be recommended for funding out of the small urban and rural component. In the small urban and rural component, the cutoff score for funding recommendation was an 83. 3 projects scored an 83, and we used the same secondary ranking system that was used in the statewide component. There is enough programming capacity available to fully fund 2 of the 3 projects and partially fund the 3rd. The staff recommendations include 44 projects for the statewide component and 10 projects for the small urban and rural components. Many projects not recommended for the statewide program component remain eligible for the MPO program component. The MPOs will bring their program recommendations forward at the March 2017 CTC meeting. Getting to staff recommendations in the ATP program is truly a team effort, and I would like to add my thank yous to the ones that Susan already mentioned. And I'd like to thank all the stakeholders for their continued dedication to the program. In particular, I would like to thank all the evaluators who volunteered many hours in reviewing the applications. I'd also like to thank April Nitsos of Caltrans Local Assistance and her staff for all their technical support for the program, particularly for successfully rolling out an electronic application. I also owe a debt of gratitude to all the commission staff who pitch in during the most hectic ATP moments. I'd like to call out particularly Megan Pedroselli, Ann Johnson, David Van Dyken, Mitch Weiss, Christina Asori, and Teresa Favela, who were all particularly supportive. After adoption this afternoon, there may be the need for more technical changes and corrections. As we've done with other programs, the proposed adoption resolution includes a clause that would authorize staff, in consultation with Caltrans and local and regional agencies, to make further technical changes, with all substantive changes to be brought back to the Commission for approval. The next cycle of the ATP will be the 2019 cycle, and we're already taking comments and recommendations for this next cycle as we continue to work to improve the program. I'm now happy to take questions, and I'm sure we have speakers.
Okay, one question.
So what are you recommending regarding the Santa Barbara project, since there's so much comment on it?
We are recommending that it be approved for funding.
Okay.
Yes.
And I remember the Coachella Valley project from back when it was first presented some years ago. It looked like a pretty good project on the face of it. So I was looking through here. I didn't see the detail for why it lost favor.
It wasn't the project itself. It was more the way that the information was presented in the application was incorrect, and we worked with the agency, and they were aware of what had happened, and were in agreement with the point reduction.
Okay, so do they still have an opportunity to reapply for future funding?
Yes, they were funded out of the first cycle, and they put in an application in the second cycle and this cycle, and we will work with them on the next cycle to make sure that that they are able to present their information in the best way. We've also, I think a lesson learned for us is that for very large projects such as that, I think we need to have maybe a more specific application process for that type of project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, now, before we take action on this thing, and for the members of the audience, there are 19 speakers lined up for this. So we are going to strictly enforce the 3-minute speaking time limit. I'm going to call 3 names. Would those 3 folks please come forward, so we're not waiting for somebody to come down to the dais? So if we will line up, Greg Hart, Michael Gutierrez, Rosemarie Gaglione, and Don Longstaff. Would you please all come forward? I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair.
We're going to try and get through this by 3. Take a break.
Mr.
I'm
Chair,
sorry,
members
go
of the
ahead.
commission, my name is Greg Hart. I'm a Santa Barbara City Council member. Appreciate your staff's very diligent work on the ATP application for the West Side Bike Path. We've had some community members who have some concerns about that project, but I want to assure you that we went through a very, very long and extensive public information and exchange process, a dialogue with the community to come up with this project. It has very broad support. There are a number of people here who will speak to that support. As you can see from the packet of materials, Ms. Bastig Vicente communicated very clearly with our staff. Our staff took great care and attention to responding to her in a very thoughtful, professional manner. We continue that dialogue with her. We understand her concerns and are working our best to address them. But at the end of a very long and significant public process, it's not usually possible to have 100% consensus. You know, in this case, this person has concerns about the project, but the vast majority of the people in our community are very supportive. This is truly the culmination of about a 40-year effort to connect the east side and the west side with a bicycle project that marries the city together. And this funding is critical to making that improvement. We have no way locally to generate the funds to make that connection possible. So we're very grateful to your staff and the attention that they gave coming down to Santa Barbara, meeting with Ms. Bastig Vicente and our staff and understanding this issue at a very fine grain level. So we appreciate your consideration, your attention. I'm happy if you had any questions to answer them. We have members of the city staff here that will make additional comments and a presentation to give you some more details about the project. But thank you again for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you. Michael Gutierrez.
Hello, good afternoon, Commission. Also, buenas tardes. My name is Michael Gutierrez. I grew up most of my life in Santa Barbara. I specifically from the West Side neighborhood. Every day I commute from Upper West Side all the way to downtown where my work is at. I am a working class person, so I depend on a cycle, on my bicycle, and making sure I take the safest routes. So I'm here today in favor of the grant because as a community organizer and someone who just really takes a lot of pride in his neighborhood, I just really care about the safety of the community, and also I wanted to express with the individual who's expressed against this grant for the community that I was personally offended where she was taking a position that she represents the West Side. I was just like, I never met her in my life. So I'm just here today as a cyclist, a Santa Barbarian, and also someone who really cares about their community, and also to express that this process of putting this, increasing our bicycle infrastructure was really done really fairly, communicated really well, and I just want the best for my community and just to make Santa Barbara just a better bicycling community. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosemary.
Good afternoon. I'm Rosemary Gaglione. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Goleta. Last year, your commission reprogrammed our Equal Street Extension project to fiscal year 1920 to save the STIP funding, and we're very grateful for that. Unfortunately, the ATP grant that we got in cycle one couldn't move along with that. There was a limit of 12 months worth of extension for that. We did recompete this cycle, but we didn't make it. It didn't compete with the other projects that were there. I guess, as you would know, each cycle you have a different batch of competition. We, of course, are going to build the project, but the loss of this almost $2 million is a hit, and it'll come from other projects. I don't know if there's any way now or in the future that Commission can think about something. I don't know how many other agencies are in Goleta's position. Some way to, I don't know if it's have extra points, if it's recompete for something else, we might be able to get some of that money back. And just wanted to get your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Before Mr. Longstreet speaks, could we have Eve Sanford, Mariela Magana, Marvin Norman, and Tony Dang please step forward? Mr. Longstreet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Don Longstreet, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Santa Barbara City West Side Community Group. We officially represent the 25,000 people living on the city's west side. We are the most racially diverse and the most densely populated neighborhood in the city of Santa Barbara. We are here in support of the West Side Bike Boulevard project. This project is not only vital for the regional benefits and the connection, it is desperately needed for citizens of the West Side. As of this moment, there is no safe route connecting the West Side to downtown. There is no north-south route for school children or commuters. We do not have a safe route to school in this area. In spite of this, we have the highest concentration of bicycle riders in the city, approximately 14%. This is not a new process for us. The West Side community alone has been asking for help for these issues for 30 years. Now, after 2 years of nonstop work from staff and the community, we are closer than we've ever been to a solution. We have a community consensus. Of all the people who have actually attended the numerous workshops, outreaches, and meetings, only a single person opposes this project. And I will say this. The information in her letter is not true. This project will positively transform life for thousands of residents in the city of Santa Barbara and change the face of our entire community for the better. Please implement this funding as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Eve Sanford.
Good evening, Chair and Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. I'm here speaking today on behalf of the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition. In addition, our partners, the Coalition for Sustainable Transportation and the Central Coast Alliance, United for a Sustainable Economy. I want to start off by thanking the CTC and your hardworking staff for implementing, overseeing, and constantly improving on the active transportation program. It's a vital source of funding for expanding safe active travel for Californians across the state, especially those in disadvantaged communities and students. I'm here today to support the 2 ATP projects that were selected for funding in Santa Barbara, the West Side Bike Boulevard Gap Closure Project and the East Side Bike Boulevard projects. Both of these projects were developed with hundreds of people's input through the Bicycle Master Plan process and through several city council meetings and community meetings. Both projects will serve to connect a disadvantaged community that has high cycling rates to strong crosstown routes. Both will provide safe routes to school for students, to Harding Elementary, Franklin, Santa Barbara Junior High, and Santa Barbara High School, in addition to creating connections to important community centers, the West Side Community Center, Franklin Neighborhood Center, and East Side Library. Both will work to reduce and calm traffic for the entire neighborhood, serving to create a better space for biking, walking, and driving. I highly encourage you to move forward with recommending both projects for funding. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mariela Magana.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mariela Magana, and I work for Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. We are stationed in the Eastern Coachella Valley and the lower income communities of the San Joaquin Valley. And so I'm not sure if you all received a printout that I brought with me. So what we do is we work with local partners to help bring transportation programs to our areas. And one of the projects that we've collaborated is a Relax Acres project. Now, I would like for you all to look at the images that I brought today. And so here today we heard a lot of great innovative ideas that for the most part are for urban communities, specifically also communities that have access to Wi-Fi. Here you have images of the community of North Shore, which is located in the Eastern Coachella Valley. Here you have images of lack of infrastructure. So I'm just here to emphasize the need to continue investing in communities of rural California, specifically those on unincorporated communities like North Shore. Here we have students who are walking to school who don't have safe routes. They don't have the appropriate signage or sidewalks. On the back side, I'm not sure how you guys are looking at it, we have an image of a Sunline bus stop. Here we have a bus stop that doesn't have any amenities. So that's another issue that we have with our transportation in the Eastern Coachella Valley, which is, I'm sure, something that is happening as well in other rural communities in California. So again, I just want to emphasize the need to investments in rural communities in California, specifically those in the Eastern Coachella. Thank you.
Thank you. Marvin Norman?
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Marvin Norman. I'm the Policy Director with the Inland Empire Biking Alliance. We represent bicyclists and also most pedestrians out here in the Inland Empire. This is actually the most dangerous area of the state for pedestrians and bicyclists, so we have a lot of work to be done out here. And so we're thankful for the ATP program. It has definitely helped a lot of communities out here. They've had several good projects funded out of it. However, we are getting concerned about the program itself in some ways, because our organization has helped communities and agencies apply for it all 3 cycles, and we have noticed that there's been a decline in applications from the first cycle through this last cycle that just completed. And we've noticed that some agencies are starting to feel that maybe they can't compete well, or that it's a waste of their time, and especially with the amount of information that sometimes has to go into an application. And so agencies are getting the feeling that it's not worth their time, and so that's unfortunate, especially for us out here where we really need the safer infrastructure to help save lives and also help with our economic development. And the Inland Empire still lags behind the rest of the state in recovery after the downturn. And so we need a better system. And so the other problem that we've also seen is that although there are urban areas in the Inland Empire, like we're here in Riverside, which is one of the bigger cities in even the region, I think it is the biggest city in the region, we also have rural communities, very rural communities. And because they're still in San Bernardino or Riverside counties though, and those 2 counties are part of SCAG, those communities often can't really put together a project that competes at all at the statewide level. And they because they're part of SCAG, they also can't compete on the rural community component. So we're thankful for the program that has gone through so far, but those are some things that we would hope the commission could consider as they look forward. I know the SB 1X or several of the bills that were put in the transportation special session had mentioned creating a division of active transportation in Caltrans, and perhaps if that happens in the final bills that are passed, that might be a way to address those concerns. But thank you for your time, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby?
Yes.
Can I have a question? Have you been able to participate in formulating the guidelines with our staff?
I personally have not. One of our other staff members was, our executive director did.
I would suggest you take an active role in that, because you're suggesting changes, but I didn't hear any recommendations on what the changes ought to be. So,
right,
they're very easy to work with, and I'd be happy to hear what your concerns are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before Mr. Dang takes the microphone, Jeannie Ward-Waller, Bill Sadler, Jared Sanchez, and Rob Dayton, please approach the mic. Mr. Dang.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair. My name is Tony Dang, and I'm with California Walks. We have been intimately involved in the active transportation program since its inception. And I first just wanted to start off by really thanking the Commission and staff for your leadership in really crafting a program that I truly believe is an exemplary model for the entire nation when it comes to walking and biking. I again wanted to thank Commission staff for being very open and willing to work with all external stakeholders, and we fully support the revised staff recommendations for the 2017 ATP, which we believe maintains the program's integrity and really advances the goals of the program. I did want to lift up one project in particular that my organization was involved with, which is an award to the Rexland Acres community in South Kern County. We worked with community organizations and residents, and in particular youth, youth to identify their active transportation needs. And in doing so, we were able to work with the County Public Works Department to put forth a truly community-driven project that I am really hopeful that you all will approve, that will help to really transform this unincorporated community. California Walks and our partners are always looking towards future cycles to really improve the programs, and we submitted a joint letter to the Commission and staff outlining a number of recommendations that we believe can further strengthen the program. I just wanted to highlight two of those recommendations, which are, one, the need to really ensure that the ATP funds are going towards non-motorized facilities. We have seen some projects allow for electric vehicles on those facilities, and we find that extremely problematic. So ensuring that the program guidelines make very clear that ATP dollars are meant for walking and biking projects is critical. And the second recommendation I'll highlight is really the need to establish separate review criteria for very large projects, and particularly projects that have multiple phases, because it's very easy to kind of assume that a project once fully built out will provide certain benefits, but if a particular application is only focused on one phase of the project, then the benefits really need to be related to that particular phase. With that, I just want to thank the Commission staff and look forward to continuing to work with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jeannie?
Don't want to waste any of my seconds. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jeannie Wardwaller with the California Bicycle Coalition. It's great to see you, and it's great to be here to support this program and the good work that the staff is doing. I want to echo the huge thanks to Lori for all of her hard work. I talked to her a number of times through the process, and she's always terrific to work with. So I'm here to support the revised staff recommendation. And I think, in terms of all the comments we always hear on this program, one of the things that I keep coming back to is there's just so much need. And across transportation, obviously, we're talking about funding and the need for more funding. And this is one, additional place we need more funding. So I want to thank Mr. Frazier and Senator Bell as well for their work in looking for ways to raise revenue for the ATP, as well as for other transportation areas. So we're working with them on that. I want to just comment on the request to rescore and reevaluate the CV Link project. We looked at that closely. We actually looked at all of the projects that were recommended for funding carefully, and particularly for that disadvantaged community piece. And across the board, all the projects were really good, and there was just this one error. So thanks staff for reevaluating that, and also want to thank the project sponsors for their understanding. We look forward to continuing to work on supporting the integrity of that piece of the program. We also, on behalf of our local partners, want to support the projects that are now being recommended for funding. In addition, in place of that one grant, we work with Bike East Bay and Bike Walk Alameda, and they supported that Alameda project very closely. The Santa Ana project we also know is a great project. The LA County projects as well. And I want to echo the comments of Ms. Sanford from Santa Barbara Bike Coalition on that Santa Barbara project. We definitely support that one as well. And as Tony said, I think there are a few things to work on for the next cycle. We've continued to have our work cut out for us in refining the guidelines each time. I think I support Lori's suggestion of, looking more closely at some of the larger dollar projects and maybe having a slightly separate screening process for the smaller projects versus the larger ones. So we'll have suggestions and ideas to improve that for next time. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually had a question, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. First, thanks for all your advocacy and the good work that you do. And for mentioning again both AB1 and SB1 and active transportation program funding in each. As a side note, I'd be happy to meet with you and the coalition to boost those funds. Might there ever be openness to considering some type of license or something so that we can generate even more revenue rather than just depending on Caltrans efficiencies as a funding source? Is that worth exploring at all?
Absolutely. We'd love to meet with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much again for all you do.
Bill Sadler.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Bill Sadler. I'm here on behalf of the Safe Routes to School National Partnership. Like the two previous speakers, my organization and myself have been very active participants in developing the guidelines and reviewing projects and just being a really actively involved in this program. So I'm here as well to support the staff recommendations. In particular, we are really happy to see that over half of the funding is going to Safe Routes to School projects. There was a set aside in Cycle 1 for Safe Routes to School projects. Since then, there has not been, but these projects continue to score very well, and these projects are really essential for our school children who are walking and biking to school out of necessity or by choice. It's a safety issue in a lot of these communities. It's a health issue. This is our future generation that will be using the system we're building. So we're happy to see that that this funding is going to a lot of those communities. I did just want to highlight, though, that in terms of project types, that there were only 2 non-infrastructure projects and 2 plans that were funded, and sometimes these plans are fully eligible for the ATP, but they don't always tend to compete well against larger infrastructure projects. But they are absolutely essential to for non-infrastructure in particular, for creating Safe Routes to School programs, for doing education and encouragement activities, to be building support for walking and biking, getting kids trained in how to do bike safely in their communities. There's a lot of programmatic elements that go into active transportation, and also planning. There's in order to get a larger infrastructure project funded, a lot of time, most cases you need a plan. You need a plan for identifying where in your community you're making the improvements for walking and biking. And so we would really encourage the commission and the staff to consider instating a set aside for these projects within ATP. We know that funding is very limited in general and very competitive, but these are absolutely essential to getting these communities to be able to later on be able to apply for infrastructure funding. So that would be one of the concerns that I would have. And the other thing I just wanted to highlight is that a lot of the money is going to disadvantaged communities, almost most of it is, and so we are pleased to see that as well, especially for Safe Routes to School, because those are the communities where kids are walking and biking out of necessity and where it's the most unsafe. So we highly support the staff recommendation today, so thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Jared Sanchez.
Hello, I'm Jared Sanchez. I represent the California Bicycle Coalition. Today, I want to provide a comment on behalf of one of our local affiliates, the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition, since they are unable to attend today. The LA County Bicycle Coalition appreciates that the CTC has taken a holistic view on active transportation, particularly in disenfranchised communities. The coalition fully supports the revised staff recommendations for the 2017 ATP that maintain the program's integrity and provide opportunities to additional localities that have been historically disadvantaged and well suited to furthering the goals of the Commission on active transportation. Specifically, the projects that are now to be funded in the cities of Compton and Long Beach will greatly benefit residents by increasing their mobility options. Whether you're walking or biking to the Compton Blue Line station to get to work, or you're an elderly person that now lives in North Long Beach that must traverse freeways and poor walking conditions to get to a clinic in downtown Long Beach, these projects will help everyone in those areas. As LA County residents demand more livable communities, it is in projects in our disenfranchised areas like Compton and Long Beach that will lead the way to helping out those most in need. The LA County Bicycle Coalition thanks you for your time and leadership on all these issues and the flexibility to revise awards that live up to the ATP's programs, priorities, and mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before Mr. Dayton comes up, will Todd Amspoker, Cameron Gray, Peter Brown, Christopher Price, and Stella Kim please approach? Mr. Dayton.
Alvarado and Commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Rob Dayton from the city of Santa Barbara. I'm the Principal Transportation Planner. And before I begin my comments, I just want to thank you for this program. It's a privilege to be down here. And I agree with some of the other commenters. In my 25-year career and dealing with many grant programs that the state puts forth, this one is very effective and is geared towards the merits of projects and is going to be transformative for our city. So thank you. I just want to say, you know, Santa Barbara, you may think that is a place of what started the environmental movement, but actually we're pretty conservative on transportation. It was a pretty hot topic when we did our bicycle master plan, and our council said, we don't want a staff-driven plan. What we want is a community engagement process. Therefore, about 80% of our $200,000 for our planning process went toward engaging the community. We hired a community engagement consultant, not a bike planning consultant. The thing that one of our staff members, Peter Brown, is going to go over that engagement process pretty lengthy, but my first bike plan back in '98 had about 80 participants. This one blew the doors off. Over 2,000 people filled out a survey. We had 5 summits. We did 2 summits in disadvantaged communities, which were Spanish, presented in Spanish, translated to English. That's the first time that's been done in my career. And we had the city hall was packed with people, more so than we've ever had. We had to put TVs out in the hallway so people knew when their next time was to speak. So the thing that I want to emphasize is that the projects that are presented that actually made it into our applications, which our staff is recommending, those projects are much different than when they were first proposed to the community. In fact, the community has changed those projects from streets to whether they're bike boulevards or bike lanes or green lanes. The community's fingerprints are all over it. And while we're frustrated that we can't have everyone agreeing on exactly what has been presented and what the council has approved and the community's come forward with, while we'd love to get to that point, we don't want to miss the good that has been done in the community consensus over people who maybe not agreeing. So please support this, and all the people. I wish we could have all the people from Santa Barbara supportive for you to be out here so you could see them. We can't do that, but please support this project. Thank you so much.
I think we're close, though. Okay, Mr. Amsbrook.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. My name is Todd Amspoker. I'm an attorney in Santa Barbara. I represent the Mitchell-Torena Neighborhood Association regarding the City of Santa Barbara's bicycle master plan. The objections that have been provided to you are not correct. When the plan originally came out, more than a year ago, a group of homeowners and business owners and residents in the Mitchell-Torena Street area had some concerns about the project. So on behalf of my clients, I raised those concerns with the city and provided some documentation to the city. The result was an extensive public process. The city council decided that the community should be re-engaged with respect to the bicycle master plan. There was a city council meeting, I believe, last February, in which more than 100 members of the public came and spoke about the bicycle master plan. The result of our involvement was that the city opened up the entire bicycle master plan for extensive additional public review. But that process was not limited to my clients. I stepped away from the process at that point. It was a community issue, not a legal issue. Nobody needed to pay any money to hire an attorney to advocate in connection with the bicycle master plan. Nobody had an advantage because they did or didn't have an attorney. This was a community issue and was dealt as a community issue. I also wanted to mention to you that there was extensive press coverage in Santa Barbara about this project. We have 2 local newspapers. This was front page news on both of the local newspapers. Everybody in the city knew about this. I would be at the grocery store and folks who I knew would walk up and talk to me about the bicycle master plan. Santa Barbara is a small community. Everybody knew what was going on. So my group didn't have an advantage because it had a lawyer. I was out of the process during all these discussions. The city made the process available to all parts of the city, all citizens, for months of planning and meetings. So this plan, which your staff supports, is a community design of Santa Barbara, and we encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Cameron.
Chair Alvarado and commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Cameron Gray,
and I am speaking on behalf of Community Environmental Council, a nonprofit that is based in Santa Barbara and was very involved in the development of the bicycle master plan there. What that plan includes, the projects for the east side and the west side neighborhoods, are really the product of an extensive community input process, as you've heard from several other speakers here today. And what I will also say is that if I were asked if our organization got everything we wanted out of that plan, I would say no. But what I would also say is that we are incredibly proud of the projects that were included in the plan, because they are the product of extensive and sometimes painstaking community compromise, where you had people with very divergent interests and perspectives coming together and creating projects that would really meet the needs of the entire community. As was mentioned, there was outreach to people who speak English as a second language, which we believe is really important, and we hope that that will continue to take place as the city conducts its work. So in closing, I just really want to make it clear that anyone who says that the city could have done more, that they didn't do enough public outreach, I think that they're either misrepresenting the facts or they're misinformed. They did an amazing job, and we are, as I said, incredibly proud of the projects. We hope you will support them. Our organization stands by them fully and completely. And we thank you very much for your time and consideration of these comments.
Thank you. Peter Brown.
Thank you, Chair Alvarado, members of the Commission. Peter Brown, I was the project manager for Santa Barbara's Bicycle Master Plan. I'd like to start by echoing again the kudos from Director Branson and Lori Waters. This was a heavy lift on behalf of your staff, and I think they did a commendable job. I'm not sure if the slides are up or if they're coming, but luckily for me, many people have already stolen my thunder, and I don't have a lot of additional points. I did find 2 slides from early in our process 2 years ago, and they spoke to, next slide please, the council's direction for us in terms of how we started, and that was to get non-cyclist input. They wanted public input. If you didn't ride a bike, you had a stake in this plan. They wanted community consensus. Make your best effort to achieve that. Mr. Dayton spoke on a few things on how we implemented that, but I think innovative for us was developing an outreach and media strategy, which is part of our plan that told us how to go out into the community. Next slide, please. The other thing that we found out early on, and I would point you to points 2 and 4, again, early on, we wanted to find out what the community's commitment was to bicycling now in the future. It turns out that commitment is quite strong, as you've heard so far today. And then point number 4, to propose a bicycle master plan that reflects that input and really is community driven. And for the sake of time, I might just move to the last 3 maps that I have, although I don't know how to advance. If we could keep going. Does this advance the slides? Yes. Okay, there we go. Great, so I like the graphic representation. So in your packet today from your staff is both east side and west side projects in the city of Santa Barbara. The black lines represent those 2 projects. The green lines are where we're going to turn our streets green for the bicyclists in the bike lane. This kind of shows the heart of the gap closure, which will be really important for multimodal transportation users. This slide shows the west side project in particular, the green lanes over US 101, the census tracts that represent our disadvantaged community, which will benefit from this quite nicely. They do have a really high proportion of trips by bicycle and by walking. And the last slide I'll show you is really the one that's most important to me, and that's our collision analysis. We really need this project for safety purposes. The Chino Bike Boulevard on the left side of the screen is going to be a project that really takes all of those collisions off the adjacent street and gives a high quality bicycle way for folks to travel on. So that's it for my time. Thank you so much, and good luck today.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
I'll be really, really fast. So item number 3 on your objective was to increase the awareness of the traffic rules and regulations and the mutual respect. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done with that?
Yeah, that is an important goal. One of the things we've done is we've recently adopted a Vision Zero program, and a big community outreach program will continue that will focus on user behavior. We're going to work with the police department and the community, our nonprofits. We have a really nice program together to get out in the community and really help folks understand what the rules of the road are and what their responsibility is as Santa Barbarans on how to behave, I would say, more safely in our city.
Christopher Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Christopher Price, and I'm a land use consultant in Santa Barbara, California, and I work with Mr. Amspoker, whom you heard from earlier, representing the Mitchell-Trina Neighborhood Association. Very briefly, I want to echo everything that's been said about the plan and overall, and specifically the West Side project. It's been thoroughly vetted. We got involved in the process. The process was opened up. The city absolutely reviewed this. It was controversial, as Mr. Amspoker mentioned, and frankly, we're scratching our heads why there's opposition to Chino Street. And those people had every opportunity to participate. It's going to be a net benefit to that community, both from a traffic safety perspective, to a pedestrian and cyclist. I looked very carefully at their correspondence. I don't see anything of any merit in that that would suggest there's going to be an impact to the neighborhood. So I urge you to approve funding for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Stella Kim and then Tom Kirk.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Stella Kim, and I'm with the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network. We are a statewide policy advocacy organization that prioritizes the needs of communities of color and low-income communities across the state. And we really appreciate the opportunity to engage in this process around the active transportation projects. We actually submitted a letter with some recommendations and concerns along with our partners at the California Bicycle Coalition, California Walks, and Safe Routes to School National Partnership. We just want to reiterate that we support the points made by our colleagues and partners previously, and we really thank you for the opportunity to represent low-income communities, and particularly communities of color in our diverse state through this process. We see this as really a public health issue that affects the status of health in many families and children and communities. And we appreciate your leadership in this effort. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Tom Kirk.
Tom Kirk, representing something called CVAG and CV Link. And there have been a number of questions about CV Link. Just wanted to address the commission staff's recommendation, which I fully support. We've worked with your staff very closely on the revised recommendations. We are hoping to come here and accept $24 million. We're coming here to support a recommendation that allows us to access to the regional MPO funding, maybe $5 or $6 million, which would be fantastic as well. With respect to some of the other speakers' comments about changing the rules of the game for big projects, ours is a 50-mile long, $100 million project with $75 million of committed funding already. Ours is one of those big projects with multiple phases. It is a challenge for us to address some of the disadvantaged communities because we address many disadvantaged communities and not so disadvantaged depending on the phasing. So we look forward to working with your commission staff and perhaps addressing these big projects in a different way. We have a long-term relationship with Caltrans and the CTC, and we look forward to finishing what we believe is the state's largest active transportation project with you in the coming years. The first phase of construction is next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, this is an action item. You have a staff recommendation in front of you.
Second.
Nope. Motion was by Commissioner Gilmetti. Second was by Commissioner Art. Further questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we're going to take a break. It is 3:37. We'll have 10 minutes, 3:47.